Okay, so welcome everyone. This is Connie. I am here to talk about one of my favorite subjects these days because it's literally been a tool that I personally have used since I met Dr. John Worley several months back and have gone through a certification process myself. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this path that I consider is a compass. It's a tool, and thank you everyone for joining. Annette, thanks for being here. We're going to go through a little bit of an overview of a tool called WIDP and why I believe that this is a tool to help us offset the imbalance in the world around us and how we're feeling and how divided some of our communities feel, whether that community is inside of your home, it's at work, or it's in your family, or it's just in your, just day-to-day interactions with other people. But I have been using this tool personally. I have been through a journey with it, and it is just continues to unlock more and more of me and who I am. So when I say I'm talking about restoring your authenticity, I'm literally living and walking this journey right now. So this is a topic about restoring. I call myself a personal restoration guide because there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always people that come from other walks of life that can help us with wisdom and with grace and holding space. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll have probably other people that will join us, but we're going to put this out onto the internet once we're done with the recording. And hopefully you enjoy the playback if you're going to catch it at another time. So what is this authentic concept, or this concept of temperament? But before I get into that and what temperament actually is, the reason that this resonated so much with me is because every time I have looked around over the last several years, and I think it's increasing, is there is signs of gaps, and there's big, Grand Canyon gaps in our awareness. And then there's, gaps in between people and the relationships that we have with people. And whether it's chaos in relationships where it constantly feels like we're in this push-pull and we're pushing and pulling between each other. There's social conflict going on in our communities. There's dysfunction in our families and toxic behavior, or behavior that really creates challenge in the environment that we live in or we work in. There's corporate meltdowns happening. There's really bad leadership in companies that are driving, things to actually publicly be displayed that we would have never have guessed that would happen. There's, festivals and things happening in the public eye and on the news that we just don't understand. And there's a ton of tension between people. And there's also a lot of leadership failure in our governments, whether it's at the national, state, or social community level. But most importantly, we're right in the middle of a mental crisis, a mental health crisis, and or fatigue. And the fatigue and the number of people that are going through counseling and institutionalization or coping behaviors with, whether it's substance abuse to food abuse to consumerism and shopping as a retail therapy. There's all of these dysfunctional things and choices that people are dealing with, trying to deal with what's going on inside of them. And so what's really important to me is that I see temperament as a key, and a key to unlock what we're all sometimes dealing with in our daily lives, especially when we're just trying to understand ourselves and how we fit in the world around us. So what is WIDP? Well, WIDP stands for Worley's Identity Discovery Profile. And what this is Dr. John Worley, who is a clinical psychologist. I had the honor of meeting him online, of all places. He connected with me, and we started kind of having a discovery relationship. And turns out that he had built this program, this tool for modern day society after 40 years of clinically evaluating different patients and clients and watching the patterns between all of them, with the way that they were trying to understand how they themselves were and what they needed or wanted from the world around them. So what he did is he created an assessment tool. It started out literally with a paper questionnaire, and then he digitized it and turned it into an online questionnaire that helps unlock the key to our inner worlds. And one of my favorite quotes from his book is, as human beings, we are seldom educated on how to be human. And if you think about that for a minute, we really aren't told. We're not told as little kids that we're going to be a certain way when we get to be an adult. We're not told that, certain things are going to matter to us, or that we're going to be shy, or that we're going to be introverted or extroverted, or we're going to really want to socialize, or sometimes we're just going to really want private time in order to just recharge. And so none of that, I don't think anybody that I know of in my circle was ever sat down and taught, this is what it means to be a human being. And so what temperament does is it validates everything that we feel inside, but fail to communicate and articulate or gain in understanding from other people. And so that's why I think this is such a powerful tool. And I'm so glad that you guys are here to listen and to learn a little bit more. So where does temperament fit in? Everywhere. So since I have done my temperament assessment myself, every single interaction has me now starting to think about, what are my strengths and weaknesses, because I've educated and informed myself with my own profile. And how does that give me the power or put me in the driver's seat? And I'm really intentional with my words about the strengths that I have to overcome the weaknesses that maybe I feel when I interact with other people. So socially, I am not a social butterfly, but it has given me the power to turn that on, turn that signal up when I want to, when I need to, because I'm working with specific types of projects. I'm in a new job where I have to be more active and more social with other people, but I don't have to blame and shame myself when I do, and I get home and I just want silence. So in employment, in family relationships, dynamics between me and my adult kids, my boyfriend or significant other, intimate relationships with my father, for example, people that are really close to us, we are going to see temperament really start to activate between people. And the more you learn about this tool, the more you will understand that this is just that natural temperament of a person. It's not because they're really trying to be difficult. It's just that how they demonstrate their needs from us, or how they demonstrate their love or caring towards us, really is based on their temperament. And the more you understand it, the less struggle, push, pull you will have with the people that are close to you. So let's keep going, because psychology is really, when we think about psychology, Annette, what do you think of when you think of going to a psychologist or into an office?
I would have to say behavioral health.
Right. But behavior means, how does it feel to think about someone else telling you how you are?
I don't like it.
Okay. And a lot of people think there's a negative connotation around going to the psychologist, going to a.
There really isn't anything negative about it. It's about them trying to help you, because they are helpers naturally, evidently.
But we also live in a society where external validation is highly sought after. We're constantly looking for validation of who we are from someone else, and or permission to be a certain way, or permission to not blame and shame ourselves, but to celebrate our differences. And that in today's world is really difficult, because we have many, many examples out on media, on social media, on the news, that are showing us what we should conform to, or what we need to be and to fit into. But what if that's not our temperament? What if that's not how we were naturally born? And so the psychology, or this whole academic side of psychology and understanding, still has one thing in common, and that is it's someone else telling us how we are supposed to be or feel or do. And instead of us understanding from the inside out what our temperament is, and then using that as a guidepost to really navigate the world around us, now we're constantly putting more emphasis on the external opinion from someone else. So that's what we're going to unpack today. So in Temperament, what Dr. John Worley really created is a assessment that turns into 3 different areas or 3 mini profiles. And in those profiles, your social temperament is uncovered, your leadership temperament is uncovered, and then your relationship temperament. Relationship is the most intimate to the person. And that is only reserved for people that really have a close place to our heart. That is our heart center. Social temperament is everybody that we interact with that we don't really know. So this person at the grocery store, the librarian, the bank teller, a friend in a social gathering. And then in the leadership aspect, this is really our center, our solar plexus, our power and control center, and where we take responsibility for the things that we are accountable for and how we feel about it and how we basically react to things when that center of power and control is threatened or challenged. And that can be in a social setting or that can be in a relationship setting. But when those 2 sides of the spectrum engage, our leadership temperament is going to lean us into the relationship temperament. When we're having a fight with our significant other, that leadership temperament is going to come out. When we're in a work setting, that leadership temperament is going to influence how we interact with our boss and how much we want our boss breathing down our neck, micromanaging us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the social temperament side, this is going to be really how introverted or extroverted we are in social settings. So as you see, there's going to be 2 numbers. There's going to be 2 areas in each profile that you will have insights when you get your assessment. And that's going to be, how do you demonstrate your behavior towards others? And what is your desired behavior from others? And that's really important because the 2 work together to create your profile. Any questions so far? Okay, so this is a graphic representation of the scale. When you take your assessment, and Annette, I know you just did, I've taken mine, Jessica, who's on the phone, also took hers. You get 6 numbers. You get numbers that work together in the demonstrated and the desired realm. For social, then you get another 2 numbers for leadership, and you get another 2 numbers for relationship. And the number, the beginning number or the end number, will end up in the introverted side or the extroverted side. And so depending on what your numbers are, it will give you some insight right off the bat on the range that you fall into on the scale here. So how introverted are you, which means more private, more socially withdrawn, more, just looking for your own sanctuary and having your own personal private time without a whole lot of influence to that or disruption. And then there's the extroverted side where you're really social, you're really outgoing, you're really out there and you need that interaction. You may demonstrate that interaction, but you may also really crave it from others. So that's how the scale is used in temperament. Now, the scores that you get when you get your profile, this is an example. This particular sample is 27, 10, 86. And what's so incredibly insightful here is that it shows the first number is how you demonstrate. The second number is what you desire. And there's a lot of the times with how you demonstrate towards others isn't as much as what you desire from others. And that when there's a gap like that, just in between that 2 numbers, there's sometimes a struggle going on inside of us. Sometimes they say, I got the devil on the shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder, or I have this constant struggle between heart and head on how I feel about things. And when those types of numbers are really far apart, you're struggling a lot in yourself. So then can you imagine when you put that next to another person, and then we have even more struggle and strife. So this is how we use the graphical representation on a scale to really visually understand how big of a difference is there between how I demonstrate towards other people and what I actually need from them. So that's where we call it the gap theory. And the gap theory is about great anxiety present. That's the push pull that we feel in between relationships. And sometimes we do that in ourselves. We'll have a negative ripple effect between how we're thinking and anxiety or depression or things like that that really cause us to be or not at ease with ourselves and the decisions that we're making or the things that we're witnessing or observing and how we're reacting to them. And that's the push and the pull. Now, just in our own inner world, we can have a gap, but then we can have a gap between us and another person. And whether that person fits into the social setting or if there's someone that's really close to us, and that's the relationship side. So you have to think about, if I know myself and I know my own temperament, what is it that I can use to inform my own decisions, my own thoughts and behaviors and choices around how I naturally am, just designed. And so this gives us that power to really choose how we react or respond or shame or blame. Hopefully we're reducing a lot of that because now we're starting to understand our natural design. So when 3 to 4 points are in between that range, the wider the gap, meaning the mathematical difference between the 0 side of the scale and the 9 side of the scale, the wider the gap, the more anxious, intolerable, insensitive, sensitive or stressful or blunt or stubborn or all of those words, indifferent or cold, that a person may be interpreted to be. And so that's where that perception of other people comes in, the perception that people have of us and the perception of other people that we have of them. And so that's where we form opinions and judgments about the other person. We make assumptions about how we think they are based on what we're observing. And as an observer, our temperament will come into play. And our temperament will say, well, I would prefer it to be quiet. And that person comes in all noisy and loud. Or a loud, outgoing person may say, how come they're not more sociable? Why are they not talking to me? And they feel rejected. Or I'm quiet and I actually have needs of someone saying, I need you to invite me in, and then I will open up. But if I'm not invited, I'm going to sit quiet. And then how come that person didn't invite me in? And there must be something wrong with me. So these are all of the internal dialogues that we have with ourselves to shame and blame, to either form a judgment or an opinion, or to create resentment and confusion or frustration in our relationships. And it can really be damaging the more that we allow that to go on, which is exactly what's happening between many, many humans in different racial and cultural heritages and different demographics. So it's really important that I've been on this mission to get temperament out because I believe it's a tool to help us understand each other. So this is an example of a horizontal view with that scale in mind, right? So with that 0 on one end and 9 on the other end, and the demonstrated side between someone's score and another person, and the desired side and another person. So I put up, for example, me and my sister. So I'm on the top, I'm a 30, and she's a 0. So that means that we don't have too big of a gap, but I also demonstrate more than what she demonstrates. Or she can ratchet it up and say, you know what? I'm actually in the mood to demonstrate more towards someone, and I'm choosing to do that. So for example, Annette, you reached out to me today and you said, I haven't talked to you in a while. I want to demonstrate attention towards you. That's very different because you don't normally do that. But there's a certain place where you actually decide and you take the power, you take the reins, and you say, I'm going to lead the way into the different relationships. So you don't do that, though, very much in a social setting. But in your relationship side, your score is a 25. So with a person off the street, you're not going to just go up and say hello to them. But with someone that's close to you, you will actually demonstrate at a 2, but you really need a 5. So that's your score. And we just happen to be a 25 on all sides, on the relationship side. And Jessica, who's on the phone, is also a 25. So we are actual carbon copies of each other, which is probably why relationship building comes so naturally to us, because we tend to demonstrate at the same level as what we need from other people. So I thought this was a really powerful exercise. And on the desired side, you can see that, we're actually at a 0, which means we don't need a ton from other people socially. We don't actually really need anything. We don't need anybody to come up to us and say, hey, you want to go to a party? Because it's probably going to sound pretty exhausting, and we're just fine staying home and in our sanctuary. And so when you're at that 0 side, you're really just like, you know what? I'm perfectly okay just hanging out by myself. I'm okay with being alone. But someone who is at like an 8, they're going to go nuts. They're going to completely feel isolated and not at peace at all. They need to be out. They need to be traveling. They need to be socializing. And that is their temperament. But they may seem completely loud and just a party person. But we have to be careful when passing judgment onto that other person, because what we're judging them is by their temperament, not by who they actually are. So the question itself, the questionnaire process, there's an online questionnaire, and then there's now a digital questionnaire. Dr. Worley has invested in a complete online system because he believes, like I do, he's on a mission to help as many people get their temperament profiling done as possible. I'm really passionate about the youth, foster care kids, people that have been through difficult times in their lives, who are struggling with mental health. I believe that this can open up and unlock a whole new dimension of themselves that gives them motivation to let go of some of the difficult moments in their lives that they keep cycling over and over again in a repeat story or movie. So the 60 questions takes about 10 minutes, Annette, would you say?
Yeah, about that.
So tell us a little bit about your experience with the questionnaire.
Easy, very easy, simple, just be truthful with yourself.
So one of the things, and I call it, it's like walking through a hall of mirrors. You can stand in the mirror and give yourself all of the false promises and false, statements. But then at the end of the day, when you're the one that lives in that brain of yours and that heart of yours with yourself, you're still going to know where you're struggling. Or you can be just honest with yourself, like Annette said. When you take your profile, the more accurate your profile is actually going to be. So once you have your profile complete, then what happens, Annette?
You get your results, and there's a lot of information that are gonna shock you about yourself, because it's gonna be spot on. Because it shocked me, because it was spot on.
That's great to hear. And I've actually seen, there's actually a couple of different temperament types. So there are 5 different temperament types for every single human being on this planet. We're all going to come in at different levels on the scale, which is where the variability comes in, but it still comes down to 5 types of temperament. And those 5 types have names that we don't really label. We just talk more about the behavior, and we talk about the types of kind of inclination towards something, the way that you demonstrate or the way that you desire. And we use words to describe the feelings or the emotions that these 5 temperament types typically have. So in the social setting, the leadership setting, and the relationship setting, you get separate pages, right, Annette, that talk about how you are in those settings. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. There's a lot of different social needs and desires. It's criteria for friendships, perception of self, perception by others, perception of others. There's a lot of information to read through.
And a lot of the times what I like to do is I like to give you a chance to read the profile yourself have your immediate reactions to it, and then schedule more of a debriefing with me. And that gives us an opportunity to talk through things that you're reacting to, that you're resisting. A lot of the times there'll be some resistance where you're like, if you're not being truthful with yourself, you're going to go, that's not like me. And there are a couple of temperament types that will absolutely reject the temperament assessment. They will reject it. And then they will come back to it, and they have to think about it, and they'll have to kind of let it sink in and marinate, and then they'll come around. But there are people that will absolutely absorb it. And the melancholy type, which Annette, you and I and Jessica are, doesn't mean that we're sad people. It just means that we're very analytical, and we take a lot of time to absorb and to digest and take in new information. So we're very intentional about what we let into our inner selves. And that just means that we need time. We need time to absorb, time to think through all the different scenarios. And then that temperament is going to start opening like a lotus flower. And that lotus flower will absolutely allow us to bloom and to blossom, because it puts us in control of our reactions and our emotions, because now we understand. And I don't know about you, but I went about 48 years of my life trying to figure out just who the hell I was and what makes me tick. And if
Yeah.
you're anything like me, all of us are doing that, which is why I'm saying the sooner we can help kids and young teenagers understand their temperament, the less struggle that they're going to go. They're not going to have 48 years or 46 years or whatever trying to figure themselves out. They're going to have a better navigator, a rudder, if you will, to help them navigate their ship. And what a gift that can be. And that's why I call it a gift.
Huge, because I was looking at some of my results, and like I said before, it's spot on. And there's a couple of things that I kind of, oh, really type feeling. But the more that I read through it, makes me understand certain areas of my life a little bit easier.
Right. And it also gives you an opportunity to kind of reflect on decisions that you've made in the past. And if you had had this information back then, granted, it doesn't change who you are and who you've become, but knowing that information a little bit sooner, you can always reflect on what would I have done with different information if I had just understood. How many years would I have not beat myself up or blamed myself or formed opinions of others that I didn't actually have to? And what it does is it completely neutralizes the emotional charge that we feel when we're around other people, because now we can start going, well, that's my temperament talking. It doesn't mean something's wrong with me. It just means that I'm likely on the introverted scale and they're on the extroverted scale. Or they're a quick decision maker and I'm someone who requires a lot of time to think things through. Doesn't make me bad, doesn't make them better than me. It just means that we're different. And so it's a very, very powerful tool. So let's talk a little bit about temperament versus personality, because this is an area that as I talk to people, they're like, I took the DISC profile. I did the Myers-Briggs test when I was in high school. And all of the major tests that are out on the market today are on personality, not on temperament. This is the only tool that I have ever found that is this granular and detailed about temperament. That's why I said this is finally the tool that I've been looking for to help me understand me as a human being and the emotions that I have. So the development of a person's temperament is different than their character and is different than their personality. So I thought it would be really important to unpack that a little bit. From Dr. Worley, he says it happens in 3 layers. Everything with us is in layers. Human beings have many, many layers to them. But step 1 is that the genetic temperament is determined while we're in our mother's womb, and that is inborn or genetic. So the things that she's thinking about, the things that she is feeling actually influence the temperament that we have when we're born. And then once that temperament is set, it stays with us through our entire life. It doesn't matter where we live, who we live with, who we actually interact with, our temperament is set. Now, what does get changed is the formation of character. And the character that we have is shaped and designed and affected by our family of origin, the influence of the people who are around us, the learned behavior and the environment, positive or negative, that we experience. So when I say that parents are meaning makers for their children, this is forming their character. Their temperament has already been formed, but their character is what forms after that. Then when the child separates from the parents at the age of about 6 and 7 is when their formation of personality or personalities is actually formed. So that is self-selected behavior and choices of who they want to be. And that's a mask or masks. You can have many masks that you wear. And if you think about it, you're a different person at work in a work setting than you are in a social setting, but you're different than the social setting than you are in the home setting or the family setting because of your temperament. And if you think about those relationships, you're flip-flopping between your leadership to your social to your relationship temperament. And those masks and those personalities get really complex depending on who you've chosen to be based on your character and the experiences you've had and how you want other people to see you. When you're in a place of, I can't be authentic to who I am, it's because you have had some type of an experience where you formed a limiting belief or a judgment or a contract with yourself that says, I can't let other people see me the way that I actually am. I've been told not to laugh or not to do this or not to do that. I've been conditioned and put into a bit of a cage. So my authentic self cannot step forward. And so those are the standard ways that we project or present ourselves to the people around us based on what we want them to see us as. Not necessarily how we are. So this is very important because this is the root of temperament, is that we can choose to understand how we're actually set up to demonstrate and or need from other people so that we can be our normal behavioral selves and with our temperament can lean into whoever we're going to be interacting with and doing whatever we're here to do. So it's a really powerful tool when we think about it that way. And it allows us to separate from the behavior, the character, and the personalities and or masks that we wear with other people around us. So there's 4 behavioral tendencies, and this is just a combination to the DISC or a comparison to the DISC profile. A lot of people have said, oh, I took my Myers-Briggs. Well, that uses DISC. And what that is it's all based on personality and on mass. And it's based on your dominant mass, how you are when you're dominant in other relationships with other people or social settings, your influence, how influential you and your personality is acting as, how steady you are in those personalities and do they change in different settings, and then the amount of cautiousness. How cautious are you when you make decisions? Are you like impulsive or are you pretty, low risk, not quick to judge or to create something impulsive in an impulsive way? So that's kind of the way that the DISC profile is set up, which is very different than the temperament profile. But I thought this was really important to call out because whenever I have a conversation about temperament, a lot of people say, well, yeah, I already took my personality profile. I don't need that again. No, you do. Because what you got is an assessment of your masks, not of who you actually are. Okay, so what if the score, this mathematical number, actually gave us a compass back to ourselves, to our true North Star of who we are, who we were born to be, and that gave us this universal understanding between every human being on this planet? What if that was possible? What would the world look like if we all knew our temperament and we knew each other's temperaments? And we could say, hey, I'm a 30, Annette, you're a 00. let's pause for a second and let's figure out how we better communicate and interact with each other in a social setting. If we all walked around with 30s and 20s and 10s or whatever our numbers were, and we knew who was like us and who was not, we'd probably work a whole lot more to understand, because now that we understand temperament, we're now armed with information to react and respond differently. Less judgment, more understanding.
More peace.
More peace. Absolutely. Because we're not running around trying to figure out, why did that person do that to me? And why did it make me feel the way that I feel?
Yeah.
It's because they demonstrated a certain way towards us. And that means that my needs were either met or they weren't met. And anytime that there's a gap between temperaments and there's a frustration, or that all those words that I used, when there's a gap, it means that some need is not being met.
Yep. Just like some of the crimes that go on in by, shootings.
Yeah.
Maybe there's needs there that they don't understand that they need, or they're not being listened to, because some people just want to be heard.
That's absolutely true. And there's a picture I just saw, and it actually was the Russell, what's that guy's name? He's the actor that turned into like a motivational coach. But I
Yes.
saw him today, and it said, cannabis isn't a gateway drug. Alcohol isn't a gateway drug. Nicotine's not a gateway drug. Caffeine isn't a gateway drug. Trauma is the gateway. Childhood abuse is the gateway. Molestation, neglect is a gateway. Drug abuse, violent behavior, all of these things that are self-harming, those are the things and the symptoms of something much bigger, which means unmet needs, unmet feelings of validation or understanding of self. And it always stems from a childhood filled with some type of negative experience or trauma, worst case, absent parents, abusive relationships, toxic relationships. But most people end up too busy, don't understand, don't have the tools to be able to communicate in their own household with their own children, understanding why their children are so different from them. And if your child is different from you, it's because they have a unique temperament that is uniquely designed for them, not you. But the more we can understand our children's temperament, and whether we're an introvert and they're an extrovert, or the different temperament styles come into play, the more we can bring peace to our children when we're creating meaning for them as they're growing.
Yep. Russell Brand.
Thank you, Russell Brand. Anyway, so I think that this is very thought-provoking, because it gives you a chance to, when I've been posting and I've been saying, is anybody ready to get their temperament profile? This is why. And this is a very affordable gift. It's actually, the profile is $50, and that's a one-time investment for a lifetime of understanding. However many years left we have on this planet, just imagine if we had that to understand and go forward, that this is such a priceless gift for $50. And so what I'm going to be forming is a way to get the individual temperament profile. And Annette, thank you for doing yours, because I think it was great timing for tonight, and for giving me just a good sense of that reaction and that empowerment that now you feel to go forward. But secondarily, I'm looking to build a community where we practice working with temperament. There are use cases and stories that we can all share based on finding evidence of temperament acting in our lives. It could be you're at the grocery store. It could be you with your husband. It could be, hey, I just had this conversation with, my best friend, and she responded a certain way, but now I see that that was her temperament. Or somebody got really bent out of shape because this didn't happen or that didn't happen, and they felt rejected. Well, every time we feel rejected, that is temperament at work. So in what ways could WIDP be helpful? One, understanding yourself. So I want to just look at this list, Annette, and tell me which things now stand out as 10 years ago, which of these areas would have been helpful for you? 10, 15, 20, just reflecting.
All of them.
All of them. My number one was number one, just understanding myself and trying to go back. Because of my temperament, I am one that becomes an investigator. When something doesn't feel right, I go through an investigative process where I literally unpack, replay, trying to figure out where it went wrong.
I think number 3 for me.
Other people understanding you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because then if they understood you a little bit more, how would you feel and what would you do less of?
Exactly.
Right? Probably less feeling rejected, less feeling misunderstood, and trying harder and putting all of this energy into trying to get them to understand and or convincing them of what you
That's very exhausting when you have to always feel like you have to convince people of this is who I am type feeling.
I need to go back through and read mine, but I was like 1, 2, 4, and 10.
Those are
Just
all.
where's my brain starts going with this stuff.
That's very good, Jess. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And they're all actually interrelated, believe it or not, because you're still going back to self.
True. That's true. I think I was really intrigued with like the job career choices, how that aligns with what my profile said, though, is where I was most curious.
And do you feel that there is alignment there?
I think it's always a push-pull for me, mostly the sales aspect that we've had lots of conversations about, because I'm not the typical shark salesman, so it's kind of finding my own version of how to be successful in sales without having to be the shark or car salesman, the used car salesman,
Right. Yes. It gives you the power to kind of augment what that perfect view of a salesperson is actually you've been conditioned to understand.
Right.
Figure your own way out. Exactly.
Or even the pressure that you feel from the sales experiences you go through when you buy things, or examples of what you don't want to be or how you don't want to be or how you don't want to make your prospects feel is kind of what really resonates with me.
Very good call out. All right. Well, at what times would WIDP be helpful? So if you think about the life journey, and Jess, you've got your little one there, and you're thinking of what her life journey is going to look like, or we think backwards to some of the kids coming up and where we're seeing challenges in society, where does WIDP plug in?
I think junior high, because I think elementary might be too young to really kind of grasp what you're trying to understand in some aspects. But I feel like junior high, when you get into all the peer pressure and the crowds and all that stuff, is still the same, especially now with all the social media as an aspect into it as well, is pretty important to understand this kind of stuff.
Yes, I agree with that. Because they're just learning who they can be in junior high. Whether they want to be that social butterfly cheerleader or the bookworm.
What about pregnant mothers?
Exactly.
So what if as a parent to be, the parents went through a temperament class so that they understood that not only the temperament for themselves, which is why number 8 is on there, because obviously, but sometimes babies come before marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Or babies come when the relationship isn't really solid. And, there's a need to understand how that relationship with your child is going to be impacted by the thoughts and the emotions that you're having within the womb.
I love that. I love that.
So what do you like most about WIDP so far, based on what you've experienced? What still isn't making sense, and how can it be a benefit now for you in your life, now that you have just a glimpse of what this is actually about?
Auntie, you can go first. Nala's being very loud. Sorry.
Oh, what I like about it is the information is, like I keep saying, spot on. It's still, I'm still processing, so I can't really answer that. And it could benefit with how I perceive others mainly. And
That's where it started for me too. And that's why I use the analogy of you're going to be like a lotus flower, literally opening its petals. Because as you understand how you see the world first, it starts giving you reason to examine your inner world, which affects how you see the outer world. And it's actually the real way that you see the outer world is based on what you see in your inner world, as within, so without, as above, so below. So those are absolutely what we have going on inside of ourselves is what we project out into the world. It's like a movie scene. So the more that you actually give yourself a chance, now that you've been armed and you're not necessarily being shamed or blamed, you're saying, hey, this is just who I am or how I'm meant to be. But the weaknesses that are called out in your profile actually are opportunities. And that's why they're called potential weaknesses. They don't mean that they actually are. It's their opportunities for you to decide how much you want to strengthen them and or partner or navigate them with the people that you have with relationships in your life.
yeah, I'll say for one, indecisiveness, that is something that I struggle with, and fear of making mistakes.
So do me a favor, and up until now, you have been without the information to understand yourself. But going forward, you now have information that says that those could be potential weaknesses, but what can you do to change them? Or to empower yourself to overcome and reduce the resistant thinking around them? All right. Jess, anything that you want to share?
I meant to ask you the other day when we were talking about this. I'd love to get another copy of mine because moving forward, I would love to like read it beginning and end of the month and maybe do some like reverse whatever just to see like I'd love to pay attention to it more.
Progression journaling. I love that.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Annette
Is
and I were
that-
talking about that. Progression journaling. Like
What-
signs of progress, reflecting. So I feel this way now, and I want to come back to that same page and reflect on it in 90 days or 30
Yeah.
days, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll have to try that.
Yeah.
Jess, I'll have to make you a new journal.
I still got like 2 I gotta fill. You gotta make one not so pretty so then I could want to write in it because I don't want to mess them up or put something ugly in them.
Well, then I'll just have to make you a grungy coffee stained one.
There you go. That'll be good.
Like the one I'm kind of working on right now.
There you go.
Here, this is coffee stained for
Oh,
you.
that is neat. I love that. That's great.
Okay, so just to wrap us up, and I'm so glad, I feel like this was very informational for you too. And thank you for, just being open with your thoughts and reflections of what you're learning and how that's sitting and settling in with you. These are Dr. John's books that he has written. He's been at this work for 40 years. He's an amazing man, and it's been an honor working and learning under him. And we are on a mission to take temperament out to the world. So the reason that I picked the Love Store Studio is because I feel like we're a safe, caring community already. I feel like there is a level of understanding and comfort with who I am authentically. And so I thought, why not start here? Why not give everybody an opportunity to get their profile, to understand themselves, and then to find ways for the coaches or the energy healers or the service providers that are inside of this community to take it and go forward. And there are opportunities to do that. So like me, you can certify on this tool and be able to become what's called an associate, where you can actually help other people and make it a little bit of a side business for yourself. Or you can bring it full on into a practice where you're like, this makes sense for me, and I want to embrace this and make this part of what I do to serve other people. And so there's opportunities for that, or there's just the opportunity to individually understand yourself and your family. And that's what I started with, and it's really grown into, but I'm meant to serve and help people restore themselves. And that's kind of what I've been called to do while I'm on this planet. So it's what I'm embracing, and it fits really nicely in this restoration community of figuring out how you create your personal studio. And that's what the Love Store Studio is all about. So the puzzle pieces are fitting together for me, and I'm so excited to share this gift with you guys.
Thanks, sis.
I love
This
this.
has been great information.
Right here.
So if we get like a pool of people together or something that are interested, would we do another one of these to go through, or do they have to take their test first?
Absolutely. I think what I like to do is I like to at least have them join the Restore Your Authenticity Facebook group, Jess, because there's information that I've put there very intentionally to kind of introduce them to temperament. And then yes, take the profile. And then what I want to create next is a regular community that meets via Zoom and uses their own profile in different scenarios and thought-provoking questions or breakout groups to really start working with the different people and their temperaments, so that we can learn from how each other reacts and then use that in actual settings to practice and to really start settling into who we are with our temperaments, so that we lessen the amount of abrasiveness that we feel, the rejection that we feel, and we build the understanding with other people. So when we get enough people there, I'd love to start setting up regular nighttime Zooms where we just all come together, and it could be at the beginning of a week or at the end of a week, and we just build community around working with our temperament.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you both for joining me on a Saturday night, and I love you both. I wish you a wonderful evening. We're going to wrap up for today.
Love you guys. Thank you, Mom.
Welcome.
Love you too, Jess.
Love you. Have
Bye,
a good
sis.
night.
Love you too, Mimi.
Love you too, Pookie.
What about me, little one?
Say hi to Auntie.
Hi, Auntie.
Hi, sweetheart.
They love you.
Love you.
I love you too.